Greetings again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OSI Today, the podcast featuring news and views from around the Office of Special Investigations. I'm Wayne Amon from OSI Public Affairs, and in this edition, we continue our special series, My OSI Journey, which showcases the diversity and inclusion of our command-wide members. And today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Special Agent Lieutenant Colonel Robert Davis, the Deputy Associate Director, Warfighter Readiness and Execution at OSI Headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. Robert, welcome to the program. It's been a long time since you and I had a chance to kind of converse at length.
I know. I think COVID was to blame there.
Yeah, dad darn COVID. Son of a gun. But it's good to have you with us. Good to talk to you again, Robert. I know we've talked about various things, in your OSI career before, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in this session. But let's get into some of the questions that we already had on board. The first one is kind of a basic one for our listeners. When and how did you become interested in law enforcement and subsequently the Office of Special Investigations?
Well, I've always been interested in law enforcement as a kid growing up, and there was a film that came out, and originally I saw it on TV because, my parents weren't going to take me to the theater to see this, but there's a film that my man did back in the 80s called Manhunter, and it's actually based on the Hannibal Lecter series of novels that Tom Harris wrote. And so there was a remake of it then later called Red Dragon, and that's what the name of the book was. But for the film, they named it Manhunter. And the film is really focused on advanced crime solving. And it was just fascinating to me, like how they were trying to detect and uncover who this serial killer was going to be. And I love that movie. And it's one film that I continually watch and enjoy every year. And that really got me interested in that regard. But by like high school time frame, I didn't really think so much about that. Like, what am I going to do after high school? And it wasn't until
your high school, you came out of Texas, right?
That's correct. Correct.
Okay. Mesquite, I believe, right?
I went to high school in Mesquite. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
I grew up in Garland, which is the home of scandalous country star Leanne Rimes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
And the cartoon show King of the Hill is.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah. But towards my later years in high school, through the JROTC shooting program that I was involved in and just competitive shooting in general, I met a man that was retired from the Air Force. And from what I remember, he was on the Air Force shooting team. His name was Ted Bailey. And back in those days, we were sending letters. And I would send him letters asking questions about the Air Force. And then one time he called me and we were talking about, well, what do you want to do in the Air Force? Because I knew that I kind of wanted to go into the military when I either finish high school or college. And he was telling me about different career options. He goes, something you might consider is this thing called OSI. I was like, what's that? And he said, yeah, you don't wear a uniform. You wear like a suit and you investigate crimes. And that sounds really interesting out the gate. So that was probably my earliest awareness of what OSI was, and sort of funneled an interest that I kind of had about law enforcement into something that, hey, I think I could perhaps do this when I get into the military.
Right. Now, kind of a little bit of specifics here. How did your OSI career begin? Obviously, agents go to the Federal Law Enforcement, Training Academy, OSI Academy down in Glencoe, Georgia, to get, basically spun up on, investigations and a whole myriad of things. Is that how your career in the command began?
Well, going through FLETC, sure. But getting into OSI was not very straightforward. Well, at least for my journey.
Right.
I knew I wanted to do it in college, and I went to an Air Force, they called it Operation OSI summer program, which your junior or senior year of college, if you're in ROTC, they send you away, or at least back then, they send you away to like a summer program for a couple weeks.
Right.
Ideally to something that represents the career field you're interested in or want to know more about. And so I did that program. I really loved it. It was a great 2 weeks down at Eglin Air Force Base with Colonel Gary Little, or now Colonel Gary Little, back then Captain Gary Little.
Right.
And I was, this is great. But the harsh reality of it is that out of the commissioning sources, there's very few slots available nationally. And I don't think that's really changed much as well. And so I don't remember the exact numbers, but there were less than, I think, 10 slots given out nationally. And that included from the Air Force Academy as well for people to direct commission into OSI.
Sure.
So I commissioned as a second lieutenant and went into communications, which is now I think called cyber, as a career field. And I did that for 6 years. And I was told that you could apply for cross-training into OSI once a year. And you couldn't, I think it was after 5 years, you could not apply anymore. Like if you'd had more than 5 years of federal service, you were ineligible to try and cross-train.
Right.
And one of the complications that I ran into back at that time was the communications career field was very stingy with letting people move out of their career field to try something else or to cross-train into something else. And so I kept hearing no a lot. Either communications as a career field wouldn't let me go, or the board just didn't select me.
Right.
And on my very last package, or my last eligible package going up to the board, I finally got selected. And that was kind of funny to me because I'd heard no so many times that honestly, the level of attention to detail that I put into that package, making sure every page was straight and
right.
everything looked perfect.
Right.
On that package, I had less attention to detail, and I just kind of put it in because I was like, oh, I'm going to hear no again. And yeah. So.
But it sounded like perseverance kind of paid off for you at that time.
It did. And I think that played in my favor too, because I think that every time I sent up an application letter, I was like, I want you to know I've been applying for every time I've been eligible in my active duty career for this job. So maybe someone took pity on me and let me in.
Well, you certainly, made your mark in OSI since then. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned you faced a bit of a challenge in getting through finally being selected. Were there any challenges you faced once you did join OSI, and how did you overcome those?
Well, the challenge that was kind of shocking to me was a few months after I graduated from FLETC, and I was in Germany at this time, or I was going to be stationed in Germany. And when I got to my new assignment, I was told, oh, hey, you've only been here for 3 months, but we're going to send you down to a fraud task force at Ramstein for 6 months now. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what? I just got here.
Yeah.
You're sending me away. And I know we're probably going to talk about this a bit more later, but I'm on the Air Force shooting team, and I've been doing this since 2002, pretty much my entire career. And I had been competitively shooting at my prior duty station in Belgium, had my own personally owned weapons legally registered in Belgium, and I had my EU firearms pass and everything.
Sure.
And when I moved to Germany, I basically transferred that the paperwork and the weapons to take with me into Germany. But that process, I'd been working with the United States Army Provost Marshal Office, which is sort of the governing body for service members in Europe that are trying to register their personally owned weapons in the country. I'd been working with them prior to me going to Germany when I was still in Belgium, and learning about the process, like how are we going to transfer the paperwork, how do I reapply, how do I do all that. And part of the paperwork process in Germany was that there had to be an 05 in your chain sign off on your paperwork. Okay. And my boss
now for our, excuse me, sir, for our novice listeners, an 05 would be a lieutenant colonel, correct?
Yes. Thank you,
okay.
Wayne.
No problem. You gotta love the acronyms, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you had to get a lieutenant colonel to jump on board for you then.
Right. And at the time, my boss was not a lieutenant colonel. He was a major. My boss at home station. So when I moved to the task force, they had a lieutenant colonel as the squadron commander there at the time. And I thought, oh, this is great. And naively, I had met this lieutenant colonel a couple times and explained that, I'm new here in the task force and excited to do things. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned to her that I was on the shooting team, but maybe she didn't take note of that. But I then prepared my package for the application for the firearms ownership in Germany. And I sent that paperwork to her with an explanation of, hey, I'm on the Air Force shooting team, and I've been competitively shooting in Europe for about 4 years now, and I just plan to continue it here in Germany. And I just need a lieutenant colonel to sign this particular package so that it can work through the provost marshal's office and onto the German government.
Right.
And unfortunately, lieutenant colonels, squadron commanders in OSI or anywhere in the Air Force are obviously very busy, have a lot of things on their plate. So she gets this email in, and I realize this now, like in retrospect, I should have done this completely differently. But at least socialize it, as we say in the command.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Right. And so she asked her weapons program manager to look into it. And her weapons program manager at the time, I'm not sure who he called, but he called someone at some level of the German government, whether more than likely down at the lower Polizei, police levels. And that unidentified person he spoke to, that represented Germany at that time, said, "Oh no, Americans cannot own firearms in Europe. That's impossible." And
wow.
So that's what the weapons program manager communicated back up to the squadron commander. And so I get a call a couple days after I submit that paperwork from my boss at Spangdahlem, and he says, "Robert, are you smuggling guns into Europe?"
What a question.
That was a loaded question. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Where is this going? And he laughed about it, because I had explained prior to going to the task force what I was doing to him in much more detail. And he was totally on board. He understood that, it was legitimate purpose, and that I was doing all the right things as far as the paperwork. And he laughed about it, but
right.
The squadron commander called him and said, "Hey, this Davis guy's smuggling guns into Europe. He's your problem now. Take care of it."
Wow, that's a terrific story. Yeah, it sounds like you overcame that challenge. It sounds like kind of a roundabout way, but you got it. You overcame it, and you're much I guess wiser now for it, I would imagine.
Yes. So, my advice to anyone going into the Air Force is, if there's some paperwork and if it involves firearms, make sure that you let your bosses or anyone part of that chain that is, signing off on things, let them know in explicit detail what to expect and what's going on, and to avoid any sort of misunderstandings later.
There you go.
I was kind of shocked about the whole situation, but it was just funny how my boss called me. He's like, "You're smuggling guns into Europe." So.
What a question for your boss to ask.
Right.
Anyway, moving along a little bit, who or what inspires you to do your best in OSI? I know in the past you said you're a real self-type motivator, but has there been anybody in your OSI career that has kind of helped you along and been kind of like a mentor to you in some ways?
I can't really say so. I know that Randy Pendleton, I remember him. He's actually, we went to the, they used to call it like is the ASBC Airman?
Something like that, yeah.
Air and Space course or something. Now it's like,
right.
It was like ABC, or Air Basic course. They might have gotten rid of it, but it was like a course that you would go to following you commissioning within like your first year of service, where you get sort of like a common ground, or you go through a few weeks of training of like commonality, to sort of bridge any gaps or disparities between like what you would learn at the service academy or
right.
ROT or something, or some other
sure.
sort.
Sure.
And Randy Pendleton was in the class, or my class, with me, and he was the first OSI agent that I'd met since I got on active duty.
Uh-huh.
And he was a really cool guy, and it was refreshing to see that, because I think there's also a misperception sometimes that OSI agents are stuck up and not helpful or not friendly or anything like that. And,
yeah.
Everyone's interaction can be different, of course, but for me, it was great just to meet somebody in the flesh, and someone that was my own peer group.
Right. Yeah. Agents are people too.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think that just how down to earth he was. I'm like, oh, and he said, yeah, he really enjoyed OSI. And he said it was a great career field. And that only further motivated me to try and get into it.
Okay. Very, very well said. Now, what is the most gratifying part of your job with OSI? I know that might be kind of tough to pinpoint, but what do you really say to yourself, hey, this really is making things well worth it for you?
Well, right now in this particular position in Warfighter Readiness and Execution, something that I really enjoy is being able to get feedback from the field. So our part of the headquarters deals with deployers and deployments primarily,
right.
Primary focus. And it's been very helpful to try and set up easy ways for deployers to reach out to us. We set up a deployment feedback email box, basically. Uh-huh. And I put the word out to anybody that'll listen that, hey, if you've deployed or you've come back from a deployment and you've got some ideas about what worked well, what didn't work well with regards to training, readiness, equipment, what have you, let us know. And it can be like a short message or a paragraph or whatever. And opening the lines of communication like that, if you will, has really opened the door for getting some great feedback from the field that we just weren't getting before.
Yeah.
On top of that, we review after action reports and also end of tour reports, and we try and glean as an organization, what are some lessons learned? What are some things that we perhaps could improve, and what are we doing well? Yeah. And so taking that feedback from the field and having deployed and known, that there are frustrations sometimes, and you're like, well, I wish someone would listen at headquarters. I wish they knew this X, Y, Z. And we're getting that feedback now.
Right.
And once we can validate it and make sure that there's, that it is a requirement that maybe it's not being met or, however, and then trying to take that feedback and trying to implement positive changes to address any potential shortfalls. That's very gratifying.
Very, very well. Good. Now, I know what we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, hindsight's 2020. If you could do it all over again in your career, is there anything that you would change about your time in OSI, or is it things gone pretty much the way you had hoped and, you charted your own path for this?
I wouldn't change a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer that not everything happens for a reason, but I think that like major life events or major moments in your career happen for a reason. And right. I would totally roll those punches again and do it all the same.
Okay. That's very nice. That's very succinct. And I know it's very easy for some people to say, yeah, I do this differently, but then it wouldn't be you, I guess, because you're the only one who's lived the life of Robert Davis and to do it differently, maybe it wouldn't be you after all.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, putting on your crystal ball here a little bit, what direction do you envision OSI going into the future? Obviously, so many things, with technology and the challenges of the world at large being what they are. Where do you see OSI going?
Well, I think that we're going to continue to move back and forth between our two primary missions of being a law enforcement entity and a counterintelligence agency.
Uh-huh.
I think you see that historically, and anyone that knows about OSI can see that as well, is that we have years of interest where we kind of lean more heavily on the counterintelligence side, and then there's some years where we lean more heavily on the law enforcement side. And right. I think as long as we continue to have both of those mission sets for the Air Force, I think that we're going to continue to see that kind of alternating every few years where there's never like a perfect balance of both. I don't think that's possible, but mm-hmm. And I think also it's just driven by leadership, the interest of leadership at the time of what are they more interested in, or where do they think that our resources should be better spent. And so I would like to think also too that we'll probably continue to have more involvement on the cyber front, because I think some of your previous guests have talked about this, but yeah. Unlike maybe 15, 20 years ago, now almost every case we have, even something that somewhat of a simple investigation, involves some aspect of cyber to it, whether it's even something as simple as a cell phone or GPS data or something like that. So I think that the cyber realm will continue to play a huge part in all of our investigations.
Mm-hmm. Now that transitions very nicely into my next question, Robert. What advice would you give someone who would like to join OSI? Would you tell them, hey, if you're into cyber, this could very well be the career for you?
I think it is. If you have some sort of advanced cyber skill that you can articulate or show examples of, not just like, I can type on a keyboard.
Right.
But if you have some advanced cyber skills that are recognizable or some certifications, I think that would go a long way to distinguishing you from the crowd when it comes to how to get recruited into OSI, because it still remains, and it was this case even years ago, is that OSI is the second most requested career field outside of being a pilot. Right, so it's in very high demand. And I'll never forget when I've done murder boards, as we call them in the command, where you have like sort of like a recruiting day. You have different applicants come in from the base, and they sit in front of you and you ask them questions. And when I did one board in particular, I think we had 4 applicants that day. And the very first applicant after we concluded the interview, we thought, oh, this applicant's great. This got all these characteristics we're looking for. This is a sharp performer.
Yeah.
And funny, by the fourth person that day, that first person that we were fairly impressed with was at the bottom of our stack.
Wow.
Because we'd met someone that spoke 2 languages, and as a senior airman already had their degree. I mean, it was really impressive out the gate. And that's why I say if you have something that can distinguish you from anyone else, that could be turned into a positive or articulated as a positive for the organization, I think that will really help you out.
Right. Well, that's very well said. And I'm sure anybody interested in OSI probably jotted some notes down about that as well. Now, Robert, I'd like to wrap our session up with your passion, if you will, I guess. Normally, I'll ask if anything else that people would like to add to their interview. My question to you is this. One of your many hats that you wear with OSI, you oversee command weapons policy. Now, I would imagine that is right in your wheelhouse of your passion for marksmanship, weaponry, these kinds of things. And so, did that aspect of OSI that you do play right into your passion or your interest for marksmanship and that kind of thing?
Well, I was glad that when I moved into this position that the weapons portion was part of the the Warfighter Readiness and Execution portfolio.
Right.
And Command Weapons Program Manager, Mr. Brian Guerin, has been doing a fantastic job in that capacity. And I've tried to help him out wherever I can, or provide inputs here and there where I can. But that definitely was of interest to me when I moved over to Warfighter Readiness and Execution, because previously I was in the headquarters as well, but working over at the Investigations, Collections, Operations Nexus Center, or ICON Center,
right.
Doing another job, and I had to move again, and I was excited that the weapons portfolio fell into this. But I will also say that I've always had this the passion of competitive shooting, and like I said, I've been doing the Air Force shooting team since 2002. And that has also stepped into something that I've been very happy the command has supported, and that's the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program, which is an official Air Force program for wounded warriors that has nothing to do with a charity that has a similar sounding name. And OSI in general has been very supportive of me coaching shooting events for that program. And that has been an incredibly rewarding part of my career, to be able to give back, especially like the skill sets that I've learned from competitive shooting, and then translate that into something helping out Air Force wounded warriors with their personal recovery, no matter what their illness or injury is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would imagine too that being a team captain of the Air Force International Rifle Team gives you that good street cred with the wounded warriors as well.
It does, and there aren't many airmen in the Air Force right now that have that sort of background. There are a few that have competitively shot this style of shooting, but that might have been something they just did in high school or college, and they haven't touched it for years. Mm-hmm. And so the program was excited to be able to find somebody that is active duty and also has professional experience in that discipline, or being able to teach the air rifle and air pistol disciplines.
Right now, not only are the captain of the Air Force National Rifle Team, but in glancing at your bio a little further, you're a record holder for the Air Force in the 300-meter rapid fire kneeling and 300-meter rapid fire prone categories. So you've really learned to hone that skill to a razor's edge, and kudos on you, Robert, for doing that. You represent OSI and the Air Force very well in those regards.
Well, thank you, Wayne. I try my best.
Now, is there anything else that you would like to add beyond what we've already talked about today? The floor is yours, as they say.
The floor is mine. I would, again, this is an advocacy for the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program. I would encourage anyone listening to this that is in the Air Force or knows someone in the Air Force, whether you are a supervisor or a subordinate, or you have a friend that may find themselves classified as wounded, ill, or injured, I would highly encourage you to reach out to the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program, or have someone that you know that falls into that category reach out to the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program and get that journey started, because I've seen it firsthand. It's so amazing to see the recovery people can get through that program to be able to get back on their feet, so to speak. And it's a humbling program for me to be able to be a part of, but as part of that as well, I like to promote that at any chance that I get, because I feel that unfortunately not many people know that it exists.
Right. Well, Robert, obviously you meant a lot to a lot of people in the program and to OSI. So thank you so much, and we like to say thank you for wrapping up this edition on such a very positive note.
Absolutely, Wayne. Thank you so much for your time.
Our guest has been Special Agent Lieutenant Colonel Robert Davis, the Deputy Associate Director, Warfighter Readiness and Execution at OSI Headquarters, Quantico, Virginia. Robert, thanks again for taking the time to be with us. It was great to speak with you again.
It was great speaking with you, Wayne. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you listening for tuning in. For OSI Today, my OSI story, my OSI journey, we should say, I'm Wayne Amon saying so long for now.